Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's a brand new year. We're in 2021, and welcome to January's webinar series hosted by Woodburn Accountants and Advisors called Your Brand Strategy for China. You've hit us on day one webinar series where we're going to be investigating brand protection in China. Before I begin my webinars, and for those of you who my past webinars, you'll know this slide very well, but this slide truly gives me an understanding of who is on today's session live with me. The beauty of the webinars with Woodburn is that nothing is really taught to you unless you interact with me. So this is the first slide where you're going to have to interact with me, and I will be calling out names to force people to interact. I know it is Monday, but come on guys, let's get cracking. So how I like to understand my audience is I group you guys into three different categories. There are the newbies, the startups, and the experienced China hands. So the newbies are those of you that are looking for an understanding or gaining an education on China because you have found opportunities, you have seen opportunity, you might not be ready yet, but you're looking at how to understand or how to build off on that business plan and ultimately how to protect your business. For those of you that are startups, you might be, or you might have already transacted for a period of 1 to 3 years. So either you've transacted with China for 1 to 3 years, or you have actually implemented an entity in China for 1 to 3 years. Those two categories for me are startups. Experienced China hands are those of you who, like me, have been in China for a good number of years, at least, 10, 15, 20 years. And like me, whenever I join webinars myself, I'm always looking to get and gain new, fresh ideas. So I would truly love it, again, if you would interact and let me know who you are. All right, are you a newbie? Are you a startup? Are you an experienced China hand? So I've got Dawn who is saying newbie. Anybody else want to add in their 2 cents in terms of what you are? Andre is a newbie to China as well. Anybody else? Steve's a startup. Steve, good to have you on. Andy's a newbie. All right, so quite a few newbies. Alvina is a startup from Chris. Oh, so a good mix, all right, 50-50 right there. So this just helps me to basically steer the presentation and how I'm going to speak to you, all right? Because brand protection is something that if you're on this webinar, you should have already done it, all right? So I might be a little tough onto the newbies and the startups, but you'll see why I'm saying that. So Garrett, thank you for coming on. Newbie, Hari, Happy New Year. Hari is an experienced China hand. James, experienced. Appreciate you guys filling in the information. So how the presentation works is the following. I'm here to educate you. I'm here to be a little bit of your mentor and coach in terms of what action plans you should be taking for 2021, all right? Brand protection is probably the first step that I recommend any and all of my clients to take on before even considering the Chinese market. So if you're on here today's web presentation and you've never dealt with China at all, then you're fine. But if some of you have been starting to market in China, speaking with partners, investors, getting a lay of the land basically, then you might be already a bit too late. All right, but we're going to fix that up and get you started straight away on protecting your brand, as well as any and all other assets that you might find valuable. Okay, so what I want you to realize is that I'm not going anywhere today until all questions and comments have been answered. So like you've done, you've interacted with me already. If you do have questions or comments, and I want to highlight here for China, there is no dumb question, just ask. All right, better to ask than guess and assume. Just ask and I will be here to answer all of your questions and comments. I want this to be 60 minutes of your valuable spend, a free webinar session, but that is my promise to you to stay on here until all questions and answers have been answered. From a technical standpoint, All right, we are using the GoToWebinar platform system. I do not own GoToWebinar, so please don't get angry and frustrated with me if you have technical problems. I upfront apologize if you do. I understand there may be issues if you have a very small bandwidth, but just know that today's session is going to be recorded. It will go up on our YouTube channel by the end of today's session. All right. If you get kicked off the platform, my only suggestion is to try and reboot it. But just know that I will be hanging on here. Now, if I run into technical issues, which is a possibility, since there are a lot of devices that are on in my house, then just know it does take me about 30 seconds to 1 minute to reboot as well, okay? And I will be coming on to finish off today's presentation. So that's the technical side, and that is then also the Q&A side. So what are we covering today? We are covering all the basics around brand protection in China, okay? Giving you an understanding of what you should be doing, how easy it is to do, to be warned of hijackers and squatters, to give you also a strategy, step-by-step strategy on how to protect your brand, all right? So that is what we are covering today. And if you have any questions outside of this topic, please also don't hesitate to ask that in the Q&A, okay? Now, as I highlighted earlier, this is a webinar series on your brand strategy for China, okay? And I just want to introduce you quickly to the China export experts for this week. So first of all, there's myself. My name is Christina Kohler-Kalucia. I'm head of business advisory. The reason I'm not putting my webcam on is because I know that in a lot of countries, there is still a lot of remote working and not everyone has the greatest of bandwidths in their homes. So I'm not putting my camera on because I do believe that will impact the quality of the presentation. But here is just a picture of me so you can kind of get an idea of what I look like. I am the leading experts on inbound investment to China. I've been in the Chinese market based out of Shanghai for 17 years. I've only been in the corporate services and corporate compliance sector for those 17 years. I've been helping foreign investors with their inbound market entry into China, as well as their implementation. And the most fun I have is focusing on their growth in the Chinese market. So there are three things that I do. It's basically strategy, implementation, and growth. And that leads me to something that I've created, which is the China Roadmap methodology. And every month I do a webinar on this methodology, kind of giving you a checklist of action plans and to-dos to protect your business so that you can focus on growth in the Chinese market. The other four experts from this week are Matt, who's actually a client of mine. He has a design studio and he's going to be telling you all about storytelling and product design when branding for the Chinese market. Then I've got Wendy, who's a digital marketing executive at Alariche and Chozun, who's going to be talking about digital marketing, and that will be on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, I've got Ariel, who's a BD manager at Ping Pong Digital, who's going to be talking about the 5 latest e-commerce trends for 2021. And the biggest topic that, or actually the biggest question I got asked in 2020, whenever I was doing any form of e-commerce trade type webinar, was what should I be budgeting for branding and marketing? So I've got Olivier Verreau, founder of Marketing to China, who is going to be coming on with me on Friday, where he will start off the presentation talking about budgeting, what you should be thinking about when you are going on the digital marketing landscape, when you're talking about KOLs, all of these types of things. He's going to give you the numbers. And then I will be finishing off the presentation, kind of doing a recap of the whole webinar series and guiding you a little bit on how to build your own brand strategy. Just a FYI, I haven't marketed Olivier's presentation at all for the main reason that he came on just last week to do this for me. But listen, if numbers is your game and you're looking to understand what you have to invest just in brand strategy, please do come on Friday. You shouldn't miss that session. And if you do want to register, go to woodburnglobal.com/events. I'm just going to type that in now into the chat section of the GoToWebinar platform. All right. So to begin today's presentation, I've kind of outlined to you what we're covering today, but why I want to explain to you a little bit your pain point. If you haven't registered your brand in China, or if you haven't registered your assets, the assets that are so critical to your business. So one of them might be trademarks, another might be patents, another might be copyrights. If these things haven't been registered under your name in China, yeah, then you're already a little bit behind in the game. Okay, this is a fundamental basic aspect that needs to occur in whatever jurisdiction you are looking to get into. And why? Because regardless if it's China, if it's the UK, if it's the States, if it's Brazil, if it's India, if it's Russia, whatever jurisdiction there is, there are folks out there that are going to try and take your brand and your assets away from you. In China, we call them IP squatters. We call them IP hijackers, which are just basically random individuals. But do not underestimate the third-party providers that you're also collaborating with, whether that's suppliers in China that are producing your products, whether it's customers, whether it's agents, logistics providers, warehousing providers, whomever, agents, as well as any employees that you might be hiring on a freelance basis or full-time. Anybody can take your assets away from you without you even realizing it. Now, why am I bringing this topic up? It's because actually I'm in discussion right now with a brand out of the UK, and the guy is so clever. He has no intention of getting into the Chinese market in 2021. He will get, I'll be lucky if he gets into 2022 because he has so many other jurisdictions that he's focusing on. But his brand is new. It's getting recognition. It's being published in articles and specific sector magazines. And he's realizing that China is going to be on his radar. Maybe not now, maybe not next year, but certainly in 2023, 2024, and he's got to protect it. Otherwise, he can scrap China off the list of any form of expansion. So he's actually reached out to me saying, Christina, I have no intention of doing business right now in China, but I've got to protect my asset and make sure that it lasts. Okay, this is the mindset that I want to spread to all of you here today and all of the listeners that are going to come up on the YouTube channel. I want you to understand that it is vital for you, if you're looking to expand into China, that you protect your assets from anybody and everybody. You want to be able to own it. Now, this will be a bit of a shocking slide, but I'm going to be a bit brash. I want to know, how much is your brand worth to you? Can you put a value on it? Do you know how to put a value on it? You've got to protect it and understand what it's going to bring you in the future. So most people have a monetary value on their brand. What is that monetary value? How vital is it for you to get into the Chinese market? Okay. If you guys want to share that with me, please do. Is your brand 50% of your business? Is your brand 60% of your business? Is your brand 70% of your business? Edwin, that's wonderful. I appreciate you giving me feedback. Edwin is saying that his brand is worth 100 million euros. Amazing. So you have a financial value on it. So how critical is it then for you to actually get into the Chinese market and save that brand? Because ultimately, here are your options. If someone takes that brand from you, you can either buy it from them, and there's no negotiation at that point, right, about what they're going to charge you for it. Or two, are you going to rebrand China? Something that some of you, if you've got historical companies that are maybe 50, 100 years old, your heart will break if you have to rebrand for one market, right? So Andrew was just mentioning he's got no idea how much his brand is worth. Andrew, that's just a very simple exercise to evaluate, right? If you are marketing products under your brand name, right? You can almost say that the revenue that you're earning, that's the value of your brand, right? Because people are buying the brand, they're buying the quality, they're buying the history, right? That's a simple exercise to do, and it's something that everybody should be evaluating, okay? If you guys are ready to rebrand because somebody has stolen it, then no problem. I mean, if you're already in that mindset, then that's not an issue. But you guys need to place this value on your brand. So let's get a little bit into trademarks in China. All right. And before I start, if you guys ask me questions in the registration form and I don't hit those or don't answer those questions, please don't forget to ask them in the questions section of the control panel. All right. What is considered a trademark in China? So a trademark is considered a visual sign. It's a word, it's a design, it's letters of an alphabet, it's numerals, a combination of colors, etc. And I'm going to use Woodburn as an example, okay? So for my company, I've got the symbol and I've got the words, Woodburn Accountants and Advisors, and I've got the two of them together. Now, if I would have had the budget, right? And this, again, it all comes down to how much you can spend right now, how much you're willing to spend. If I would have had the budget right at the beginning, I would have done 3 registrations, one on the symbol, one on the name, the word, and one on the combination of the symbol and the words. Okay, but sometimes you're so restricted by budget that you do the basic. So the basic would have been just the symbol and just the words. Or you can go even further and say, to be honest with you, the symbol is just a symbol. I don't really care if somebody takes that, but the words, Woodburn Accountants and Advisors, that's actually who we are. That's vital to the business. I don't want anybody taking that. And that's what we then registered. Now, obviously, if I had a full budget, you register all 3, you're fully protected. If you're limited on budget, then you do a combination of what you think is vital, okay? But to be 100% protected, you would register all 3 trademarks in the classes and subclasses where your business fits. So Woodburn Accountants and Advisors is in the service sector. We're not in product, we're in services. And there is a class for service providers where one of the subclasses is accounting. All right, but I do more than just accounting. So I have to go through the whole list of subclasses to basically tick off everything that I do so that nobody can take Woodburn Accountants and Advisors and say they do it in another service category. All right, that's the analysis. That's the homework that you guys need to do, is to actually pinpoint what needs to be registered, what are your brand assets, and then analyze what classes and subclasses fit for you, okay? Who needs to register their trademark in China? And this is where I get very frustrated, because ultimately, everybody that is doing business in China should be registering their trademark, all right? Whether you are a service company, trading company, whether you're simply exporting from China, if you are selling into China, if you are just a temporary marketing office, if you are, I couldn't care, if you are doing something in China, like attending this webinar today, you should be registering your trademark in China because you have interest for that Chinese market. All right. So ultimately, everyone that is looking to do business in China or that is doing business in China should be registering their trademarks. Just two case studies I want to highlight right now. One was a service company, an engineering service company. They actually registered their company in China, in Shenzhen. And to be honest with you, the question of did you register your trademark never popped in my mind as a background check, because I just assumed that they had done it. And that was my mistake at the time. So I never make assumptions like that anymore. But ultimately, what we need to check is that if you are providing services in China, don't misunderstand it. That is still you doing business in China. You need to register your brand name. If you are issuing proposals, marketing documents, service agreements with your brand name on it, yeah, you need to register that. Otherwise, somebody can take it from you. If you are simply producing in China and exporting from China, yes, you're not selling in China, you're not doing any marketing initiatives in China to promote your brand, but you are still performing a function in China, which is production and export, and you need to register that brand. For that, I'm going to show you details of that case study later on today. So regardless of what you're doing, you need to register your brand in China, all right? Now, how does it work? It's actually a really simple process. It is shocking to know that this is at the bottom of everybody's priority list when it is actually something that can be so easily done to protect your brand and protect your business. The first thing you can do is search the trademark database. This is not mandatory, but it is just an exercise to check what brands are registered that may have a similar name, similar design, similar pronunciation as you in the classes and subclasses that you're looking to register in. Okay, that's the basic research you should be doing to know where you stand today in regards to brand protection, because you might find that somebody's already taken it, or somebody has a brand name that's very similar to yours in the same class and subclass. It just gives you research. Okay, again, not a mandatory item, but something that's highly recommended. The next is that China has a first to file system. First to file basically means that the first person to submit the registration owns that registration, regardless of what has been registered in overseas jurisdictions. So I'm going to take a well-known brand, let's say Starbucks. Let's say Starbucks wasn't in China. I take that brand, I submit it in the classes and subclasses of restaurants, cafes, production of coffee, etc., and I submit it. Starbucks has no idea. I own that brand. If Starbucks wanted to get in, I basically would have to sell them that registration that I own. Okay, so this is why you can't waste time. If China is a territory that you want to expand into, please do not forget the first to file system. First one who registers it is the one who owns it, which basically means if you are too late to market and you don't get this done, then it could mean that you are locked out of China for that brand. When you register a trademark, it is registered for a minimum of 10 years before then a renewal process occurs. So that means you're either approaching the owner to say, I want to buy it from you, or you're approaching the owner to take them to court because you believe they've registered it in bad faith and spending then legal dollars to get that sorted out, or real financial dollars to buy it, or you got to wait 10 years. And hopefully the guy doesn't renew it. All right. So again, do your research, know what's already registered, understand the first to file system, and then just register it. All right. It's really not complicated. I'm going to give you a 4-step process now. All right. First step, again, not mandatory, but you've got to understand if the trademark is available. What chances you have of success in terms of registering it. That's one thing you really need to know. The second is evaluating your assets. What do you want to register? What are your brands that you're going to be utilizing in China? Now, this is a real evaluation here because you've got to understand what logo or brand name or combination of logo, words, etc. are you going to be utilizing on marketing material, promos, advertising, on the product themselves, on the packaging of the products themselves, on the pallets, if you have a unique packaging design for the pallets. So I said marketing, proposals, fee structures, etc., etc., etc. Okay, you've got to have an analysis of, this came up just the other day with a client of mine that produces textiles. What logo, brand name are you going to put on the labels of the clothing? You got to go really into the nitty-gritty details to understand exactly where your brand is going to be shown in the Chinese market. Okay, so that's your homework, that's your evaluation. The next is understanding what entity should own that trademark. Okay, now I'm saying this really for those of you that might have complex structures. First of all, I do not recommend you, if you do have an entity in China, to use that entity to register your trademark, because then you're losing out on an option to repatriate funds through licensing agreements. So this is why a big evaluation has to occur on what entity you want to use to own those trademarks, because ultimately, if you are going to instill a licensing program where either third parties or your own entity will be using that brand name, then you have to formulate repatriation strategies and make sure somebody else is owning that, okay? If you are a large organization, do you have an entity that holds all trademarks globally? If you guys have a large organization, maybe you will set up a holding company just to hold that trade in case you eventually want to sell it. There are so many options around how you want to structure the ownership of that trademark, okay? So there has to be some form of evaluation that you make in regards to that. And again, that ties very much in with repatriation strategies if you're going to set up licensing programs, okay? And the fourth step is analyzing the various classes and subclasses of goods and services that you want to register your trademarks in, your brand names in. All right. Now, the first thing that I ask my clients to do when they do this evaluation for point 4 is evaluate the existing registrations in your home jurisdictions. So I would hope that you would have registered your trademarks and brand names in your home jurisdictions. So if you've registered yourself under the EU registrar, or you've registered it in the UK, or you've registered it in the US, take those applications, look at the classes and subclasses that they were registered under, and that could be your first starting point to analyze what you want to do as a registration for China. Because it's not apples to apples comparable, it is a good first step to know what you've already done and what you would like to achieve for the Chinese market. If you haven't registered anywhere else, then what you need to do is take a piece of paper and do a bullet point list of all the activities you're going to be doing with that brand name in China, with the logo, the words, whatever it might be, the combination, etc. Where are you going to be using? What activities are you going to be doing where it's going to be highlighted? And then we can cross-check the class and subclasses within the Chinese system. All right. So just to go back, step 1, search for your trademark. Step 2, evaluate what assets you want to register. Step 3, which entity will own those marks. And step 4, evaluating the classes and classes to be registered. Who are the enemies in China? All right, so I highlighted earlier, there are quite a few enemies because anybody can be an enemy. You've got trademark hijackers, and you've got trademark squatters, and then you've got everybody else. But let me highlight basically what trademark hijackers are and squatters, because these are the terms that we use in China for those groups of people. So the trademark hijackers are basically registering trademarks through their local businesses because they see that those brand names have had a success abroad, and their goal is actually to obtain licensing fees or sue for infringement when that actual brand wants to enter the Chinese market. Okay, so you've got to be wary of these local Chinese businesses. Basically, if your brand is already in the media and they see it and you haven't registered it, then that's a big red flag right there. to do a trademark search to make sure somebody hasn't utilized it or registered something similar. Okay. Basically, what we need to be aware of with trademark hijackers is the fact that they can truly tarnish the image of the brand by either promoting it in a negative way or selling inferior goods or services under that name. Okay, so you've got to be aware of what the consequences can be. Okay, and then the biggest question I will raise is the following. If somebody has taken your brand name in China and they're tarnishing it, will that impact on you on a global scale? Will the fact that someone's tarnishing that image in China affect you in other Southeast Asian countries or Asian countries? Will it affect you in your home jurisdiction? Will there be media that will be portrayed that you then have to spend time eliminating or answering back on because that's not who you are? That's another company that's taken your brand name. Think about all the consequences and your money spent and your time spent on dealing with these issues versus just simply registering it yourself. Remember again, the minute you register it, your brand is registered for a minimum of 10 years. So you don't have to even think about it for 10 years. It's just done, right? And you want to do it well from the start. IP squatters are those that are basically registering the trademarks because they perceive that the value of the brand will go up and you haven't registered it yourselves. They are waiting for you to enter the Chinese market, meaning they're squatting on that brand name until you actually arrive. They will then claim infringement and ask for licensing fees or sell the brand willingly, but at a very high price. All right, so IP squatters, so IP hijackers are those that are local Chinese businesses. They're just basically utilizing the brand and utilizing the image that's already created overseas to then sell locally. And IP squatters, they're not actually doing anything with the brand. They're just squatting on it, waiting for you to come into the market. And then the minute you use it, saying, oh, you're using it, trademark infringement, I need a licensing fee, or stop what you're doing, licensing fee, or I can sell you the mark at a great price. All right. So what happens basically if somebody what happens if somebody owns your IP in China, and what does this mean for you? So like I said, anybody can own your IP. There can be IP hijackers, there can be IP squatters, and I didn't highlight here in the slide, but anybody else can take your brand. Employees, agents, customers, suppliers, third-party agents, whomever. Anybody can register it. Okay, so if somebody does register it, what does that mean? That means basically, if you are selling a good, a product or a service with that trademark or brand name on it, if you're manufacturing or sourcing goods that will have that trademark on it, that's illegal. If you're providing a service locally that has a bearing to the brand name or trademark, that's illegal. If you're marketing yourself, so for example, if somebody took Woodburn Accountants and Advisors from me, then what I'm doing right now by having this presentation with the logo on it, I'd be doing something illegal. So you've got to understand that basically if somebody takes that brand name and you want to use that brand name on products, services, documentation, marketing campaigns, whatever it might be, you will be doing something illegal in the Chinese market, and the company who owns that mark can sue you for infringement. Okay, so it is vital for you to be registering your trademark. And again, go back to analyzing what is the value of your asset. How do you value it? How critical is it to your business and the growth of your business in the Chinese market? Okay, I hope I scared some of you. I apologize if I did, but I do want this to be an eye-opening and really a wake-up call for all of you to realize how critical it is that if China is a market you are looking to expand to, whether you're a newbie, a startup, or even an experienced China hand. If you're creating new brand names because you've got new product lines, those are the things that have to happen first before you do anything else. Okay, you've got to make sure those things are registered. Now, I've created a trademark strategy, and because the title of this webinar series is Your Brand Strategy for China, and most of you are looking to sell into China, and most of you are looking for cross-border e-commerce solutions, I've added a little bit of a tidbit about brand protection on e-commerce platforms as well, okay? This is just an added plus. For those of you that are in the B2B business, I apologize, but the strategy still stands, even if you're in the B2B side of things, in terms of how to protect your business. Okay, how to protect your business. Or how to protect your brand in China. So the first thing is to conduct a search. Like I said, evaluate the brands that you want to protect, evaluate the combinations you want to make out of each brand, do a proper evaluation about which classes you will fall under. So if you're in the classification of goods, it's class 1 to 34. Classification of services, it's class 35 to 45. If you do a Google search right now and you type in trademark classification China, you will be able to find the classes and subclasses and do your own evaluations, okay? Or you can go to a trademark advisor and ask to help, okay? You can do some of this by yourself. If that search comes out to where you have over 60% chance of success upon registration, then you file as soon as possible. And I'll show you the document list and how it's 4 documents, okay, that you need to prepare. Then if you are on e-commerce platforms, but even if you're not on e-commerce, you are a B2B business, you can do this yourself through using Chinese search engines. Engage a monitoring service or do it yourself to see whether your brand is already being promoted or used online. So if you guys have accounts with Tmall, with Taobao, with any of the e-commerce platforms out there, or you guys are in the B2B side of things and you want to do a search, whether, you can even do just in your mindset, keep a positive mindset and say, I'm going to do a brand awareness search. You go into Bing or Baidu, you type in your brand name and you see what pops up. Okay. If you go to the e-commerce platforms, go into those platforms, type in the search function for your brand name, and see what pops up. Okay. These are things you could do, or you can hire a monitoring service that provides this on a continual basis to see if anybody is taking your brand, okay, or using it in a wrong way, okay? If you are engaged in e-commerce in China, you might want to adopt an online brand protection strategy, i.e. invest in a certain type of technology that can help you get those red flags or warning signals when somebody is using your brand name. Alternatively, you can go on to the Chinese search engines and do that search directly into the search functions, okay? Now, in the process, if you find that somebody is either in the process of filing your trademark and it has not been registered yet, or somebody has already filed your trademark, or somebody has registered a trademark that's been very similar to yours, not identical, but similar, then you will need to get an IP lawyer in China. Let me rephrase that. You don't have to. It's not that you will need to. My recommendation is you should get an IP lawyer to have or create a counteractive action. All right, so for example, do you want to go to civil litigation? Do you want customs to seize products? Are you going to have an enforcement strategy in place if you find? Now, obviously, this is geared more to B2B, B2C. It's more geared towards product-oriented companies than service-oriented companies. But even for me, I do type in Woodburn Accountants and Advisors into Baidu, into Bing, just to check every so often. I also do it in Google every so often. In case you guys weren't aware, there's a very famous British football player called Woodburn. There are a couple of actors, actresses with last names of Woodburn, but nobody so far with Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. So far I've been lucky on that. But just to know that you can do a lot of this desk research yourself, okay? And obviously, if you are an organization and you have the budgetary means to do so, you can always hire a monitoring service to supervise this on a continual basis, okay? Now, remember that these exercises are not just there to get known with IP hijackers or IP squatters. It's also just for you to get a brand awareness. Is your name being mentioned in certain places? Okay, so this exercise can give you a variety of different outcomes. It can give you brand awareness, can give you an idea on if there are people that are using your brand in bad faith, etc. And, you know, I always say that one of the key things about going into China is to have an ecosystem of individuals that can continuously support you at a moment's notice. Having an IP lawyer guiding you on that, just someone you know, someone you've met with, you've had a free conversation, you like them, you know that if something were to happen, you can reach out to them, then they can help you with civil litigation or custom seizures, okay? So that's the strategy I would recommend you to adopt. Again, not complicated, guys. It's doing your research first, knowing what's out there. Now, if everything is A-okay, filing as soon as possible. In case there is a question about this, it does take about 18 months to get your trademark completely approved and to get your trademark certificate issued in China, okay? Getting that monitoring service. All right, getting an online brand strategy awareness done. Not necessarily for e-commerce, but could also just generally be for businesses as well. And then having an IP lawyer on your speed dial, just in case, okay? So here are a couple of tips on how to find infringing products online. Again, whether you're B2C or B2B, is, again, search for names which are identical or similar to your brand name. On the various e-commerce platforms or just generally in the search engines. You can even go to Weibo or all the content-oriented platforms. Again, it's a brand awareness exercise, but it is an exercise to see what other identical or similar names are out there. A cheeky way that many guys do in China is they translate the brand name into Chinese, but by pronunciation, or sometimes they create really fantastic, how do you call that, mottos, or I don't know how to call that, phrases, I guess, that sounds so similar to your English-speaking brand name, your Western brand name. You can use those as tools as well to investigate whether people have done that. And then again, don't forget the search engines as well as the content engineering platforms. So Weibo, Baidu, Bing, just to, again, double check. And again, this is something that you can do as a desk research, i.e. you can do it yourself, or you outsource that to somebody who has these types of monitoring, brand monitoring services, all right? And don't forget to do it also on Google or in Yahoo or any of the Western search engines as well, right? Now, questions that I do get, are the Chinese e-commerce platforms helping in the fight of infringement? And I don't want to just relate this to the e-commerce platforms. So, I mean, I've listed here a couple of e-commerce platforms where I do know they actually have IP departments that are there to protect your brand, and where they have hotlines also in English language where you can reach out to them and highlight that somebody has infringed your brand. Another thing that, if those of you that are looking at e-commerce, you may already know, one of the criteria is that the e-commerce platforms will ask to obtain a trademark license certificate, a trademark certificate, that your trademark has been registered in China before you can create a store on their platform. If you are in the midst of registering your trademark, you can show to those platforms that you are in the process of doing it. And usually that will already help tremendously, with getting that store up and running. So the platforms have this back-end department for IP protection. They do require, when you set up a store, to show their trademark certificates. And just generally speaking, the trademark laws in China now are much, much fairer on Western brands. I say much, much more. It's not always the case, right? But they are becoming fairer. There are now, oh God, I know there are probably more now, but I do know that in the main cities of Guangzhou, Shanghai, and Beijing, there are IP courts that are specialized in IP infringement for Western brands. But like I said, first step, get yourself an IP lawyer that you like, that you have his number on your phone or a connection to him on WeChat, that you can always reach out in case there is a form of infringement or you want him to investigate something. But generally speaking, the sentiment in China is that things are a hell of a lot better than they used to be, okay? Which means you can fight it, but just remember, if you're a small brand, that is a money that goes into your budget you're spending on a war instead of just simply registering it right from the beginning. Okay, so you've got to make that evaluation yourself on whether you want to wait because you don't have the budget. And then, you know, there is the risk side of things that you might have to spend money on lawyers, on, you know, getting things sorted out, etc. Okay. The application process to file your trademark is so easy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, guys. All right, and I don't know why this is not on the priority. It's the #1 priority when you're trying to do market entry to China. But you need power of attorney. So you do need to submit things in original, which means if you're not based in China, you can't do this work yourself. So you need a power of attorney to appoint somebody to do the submission. You need to have an order form from your provider that they've got a registration order or a trademark search order, whatever it might be. We need soft copies of the trademarks, the brands, the assets that you want to register in. So JPEG formats of that. A copy of the identity proof of the applicant, i.e. who is going to own that trademark. If it's a company, it would be the business license. If it's an individual, it would be a passport copy. Once you've submitted these 4 documents, so these are the 4 documents we need, right? And once these are submitted, then there is a process, like I said earlier, that takes a minimum of 18 months. I'm being very negative here when I say 18 months, but it could be shorter. So when we registered Woodburn, for us, pretty much at the 11th to 13-month mark, we knew we were approved, and then it took another 6 to 8 weeks to actually get the certificate. So 15 months for us. So it can definitely take shorter periods, but I prefer to be conservative, say 18 months. That way, you know, when it comes earlier, it's a nice surprise. Into 3 months of filing the application, you have the ability to file a priority document when priority is claimed. And when I say priority, people make the assumption, oh, that's going to speed up the process. No, it really doesn't. It just means that your application goes to the priority list, i.e. above everybody else's. Does not necessarily mean it goes faster. So it's a bit of a contradiction on that one. So ultimately, what I want people to get out of this, if you haven't registered your trademark, don't think, just do. If you are on here, on today's presentation, it's because China is in your radar. You are thinking about China. You see it as an opportunity and you want to get in there. So why not just spend a little bit of your budget on getting this registered? And again, if you are a smaller brand, you're not going to have as many assets to register, or you will evaluate what are the most pertinent assets that we need to protect it, which might just be one item, one mark. And then the budget is very low. You're talking about maybe $1,000, $1,500 here, guys. It's not a lot of money when you think of the 10-year investment of protection. Okay, so don't think, just do. So remember, safeguard your brand. 3 things I want people to do: register their IP rights immediately, monitor e-commerce sites as well as search engines, these ones, the English ones, as well as the content generating platforms. And don't forget, right, if you feel like there's been an infringement, don't sit there and be like, okay, somebody's taken it, all right, let's forget about China. No, if you see that China is a tremendous opportunity for growth for you, for your business, don't forget all the various media outlets are saying, right? China had a 2% growth, 2-point-something% growth in 2020, the only country in the world that had growth. They're predicting a 6% growth in 2021, right? Compare that to your home jurisdictions, yeah? Fight for the market if you see that there's an opportunity there for you. And if you see an infringer, take down the counterfeiters, take down those that are infringing your goods, all right? Fight for it if it's really a market. Obviously, I get it. It will come down to the budget and the money that you have available. But if China is a vital market for you currently, to get yourself up and running and to build a business, then you've got to take down those that are trying to take it from you. All right, I want to highlight 2 case studies, guys, okay? So the first case study that I have, and I highlight these 2 case studies in my China Roadmap Methodology program, but the 2 case studies are the following. So I had a German brand back 15, 16 years ago, and they approached me because they were at a point where they were ready to set up a rep office in China, which was very common back in those days. They didn't need a limited company because they already had an exclusive distributor that was doing a wonderful job, but they wanted a rep office because they realized they could take away a lot of the functions from the distributor and do it in-house and do it better in-house. Now, they've been in China probably currently maybe 30, 40 years. And 40 years ago, because again, China was really an unknown market, they allowed their distributor, who they had exclusive rights, to register their trademark, their brand in China. So they gave it away, all right? They didn't realize what China was going to be. They didn't realize 40 years ago that they would be able to set up their own company and sell into China and do this business. This was all so new. The whole selling concept was new, right? 40 years ago. And obviously, we're learning from people's mistakes. So what I want people to realize from this case study, times have changed from the past. You don't have to give all your rights away to distributors, to various different third parties because they have exclusivity or you're giving them a job function. No, no, no. We can own these assets. They are assets and they should be owned by you, and you should be in control of them. If you want your distributor to pay you a licensing fee for utilizing the brand for marketing initiatives, that helps you to get money out of China, okay? But you should be owning the assets, all right? You don't give these things free of charge away, all right? Maintain them. Let's learn from the mistakes of companies of the past, all right? We can own everything. We can control everything if we want. The next case study is, again, not realizing what should be done. Making assumptions about China is not good. You need concrete facts. So I highlighted this case study very briefly earlier on, but this was a brand that was not selling into the Chinese market. They had about 80, 90 different suppliers producing a whole range of consumer products for the Western markets, for the EU, for the US, Canada, Australia, etc. And their assumption was, well, I'm not selling into China, I'm not marketing in China, I'm not promoting my brand in China. So why register the trademark? Well, I'll tell you why. Because they had a falling out with one of their suppliers who was definitely a smart guy, because he lost face, and as a revenge tactic, he registered the trademark. And when exports were occurring, the products held at customs were stopped. Why? Because not only did he register the trademark with the trademark office, but also with the Customs Bureau. And he told the customs officers, if anything is exported that is not under my name, please halt it. It's an infringement of the brand. Okay, now this supplier did it in bad faith. He basically halted their business for a period of 3 to 4 months. It went to court. They were able to prove that this was done in bad faith because of all the previous connections, but they were lucky that it only halted their business for 3 to 4 months. They found solutions around that where, you know, if the brand name wasn't on the physical product, they basically exported it through blank cartons where the name wasn't highlighted anywhere. Okay, but there were some products that did have the brand name on it, and so they were stuck. Do not make assumptions. There are thousands of corporate service providers, lawyers, just general business advisors on the ground. You can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different opinions on things so that hopefully some of that match up one with another. But do not make assumptions, okay? Get facts, have a clear understanding, and realize China is China. China is not the UK, China is not the US. The laws and regulations are not the same as any other jurisdiction in the world, okay? Preemption is the best form of protection, and it's where you're gonna spend the least amount of money, all right? So do not make assumptions. If you have doubts, ask somebody so that you get clear facts, all right? And make sure, and again, I'm just saying this right now so you have a fact, if you are doing any form of business in China, i.e. simply networking, that's doing business in China for me, right? If you're networking, you need to register your brand name and all of your assets, all right? So I wanna recap. We're almost at the end of the presentation, guys. I just wanna recap the importance of protecting your brand in China. You've gotta protect all your assets. Okay, here today I've highlighted trademarks because that's my expertise. I'm not a copyright expert or a patent expert. That goes very much into technical things. But you want to protect your assets and use them in the Chinese market, right? You want to be able to clear customs and trade with your brands on the cartons, on the packaging, on the products themselves, on the labels. You want to be able, as a marketing strategy, put your brand name wherever you think it will create a success for the Chinese market, okay? If you are in the service sector, right? And I'm gonna use myself as a case study because I did make this mistake, all right? We went into the Chinese market in 2003, and I kid you not, 2 weeks prior to us submitting our documents, a IP squatter registered our brand back then. I kid you not. And I'll never forget, on the 1st of May, which is a public holiday, I opened up my emails and I read the email from the IP squatter saying, infringement, please stop all activities where you are promoting your brand name. The outcome that we did as a service company was that we had to actually rebrand because we didn't have the budget to buy it because the guy was asking for an absurd amount and we already had to pay the lawyer because of all of this. And it was a stupid mistake that we made. And I made it, guys. And I had to go through a whole rebranding exercise, PR articles, changing all of our marketing material, all of our proposals, informing all of our existing clients. And obviously I couldn't promote back then that I wasn't registering my trademark, all right? It was embarrassing, and I'm owning up to it today because I wanna highlight to people that the extras that we did, paying lawyers' fees, and then going through the whole rebranding exercise, and then informing all of our existing clients and potential clients, going through all of that exercise, it took up a good 3 months of my time where I then didn't focus on the growth of our organization. And you want to focus on growth. That's your aim. Your aim is to grow in the Chinese market and become profitable in China. But if you get into situations like this, where then 3 months of your time is spent on something that could have been prevented, guys, prevent it. Learn from the China experience hands, their mistakes that they made with the old companies that made these mistakes. All right, that's why I'm doing this presentation and I'm owning up to what we did in the past. all right? Register your brand. When you register it, it's valid for 10 years. Nobody can take that brand away from you. It is yours. And please think and have a vision for the long term, because by registering your trademark, you can create repatriation strategies to get your money out of China, whether it's through licensing agreements with third parties or licensing agreements with your own entity in China. All right. I know for some of you that don't have entities in China, it might be hard to think about these repatriation strategies, but this is one of the biggest top 10 questions I get asked is, Christina, am I able to get my money out of China? Yes, through repatriation strategies. But if you don't register your brand name properly from the beginning, owned by an overseas entity, you can't. Okay, and this is one of the most simplest forms of getting money out of China. All right, guys. So please, please, please do think very carefully about the importance of registering your brand. Now, what I would love before we start the Q&A is to understand what your biggest takeaway was from today's session. All right. And if you guys want to get more information about trademark registrations, then please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to give you some advice on that. But please do let me know what your biggest takeaway from today's session was. How you can work with me? Well, like I said, I offer brand advisory. We can do trademark searches as well as trademark registrations. And for those of you that are in your startup phases in China, or even those of you that are experienced China hands, if you haven't created repatriation strategies, this is something that we can also help you with in terms of trademark licensing agreements. Obviously, we offer a whole wide variety of services, but these are the 3 ones associated with today's topic, okay? So if you do have questions on that, don't hesitate to reach out. And again, I am going to give you guys an option. If you want to have a 15-minute call with me just to recap regarding brand protection, what your options are, what the costs might be, because I'm not going to put costs on here. It's going up on the YouTube channel, and our charges always change year on year. So I don't want to highlight anything on this, but if you're interested about how much it would cost you, how it works, the step-by-step procedures, looking at your classes, subclasses, you know, you can jump on a call with me at any point. I'm going to put this link into the chat section. You can have a 15-minute, 30-minute, 1 hour time with me, so you can choose. If you guys want to reach out to me on WeChat, I'm going to give you my ID for that. We also hold or have a China roadmap community where I've got existing clients, potential clients, and just folks that are interested in learning from each other. So if you've got questions on China or you want advisory on China, you know, I'm not the only one out there. You can get it from the people that are actually operating there. So, you know, join our China roadmap community. Just add me on WeChat, type in China roadmap, and I'll add you in. Email, I'll give you my email as well, in case you want to reach me by email. So Dawn replied to me what was her biggest takeaway. So she said, the biggest take on today's session is understanding how important registering our brand is. Didn't know about hijackers, so this was a real eye-opener, very informative. Hari was saying, understand your IP assets, register your IP, and stay safe. Absolutely, Hari. So yeah, guys, these are great takeaways, great summarizations of today's topic. Keep them coming if you guys want to just let me know your takeaways. So I'm going to start the Q&A because there have been questions that have popped in. All right, some people have had to leave. I understand that. Hold on, I'm just going through the list. So Andrew was highlighting, is IP protection as important in a sophisticated B2B market such as farmer services? Absolutely. Whether you are B2C, B2B, it does not matter. Whether you are service, manufacturing, trading, you need to register your brand names and your assets. If you are simply doing business in China, you've got to register your brand name. Does not matter which sector you're in, doesn't matter if you think the sector is sophisticated. There are hijackers and squatters and just bad people out there that don't want to take this. And can I just highlight something? This doesn't just happen in China. If you guys are looking to expand into other jurisdictions or markets, it happens in those jurisdictions and markets as well, okay? I've done this presentation today, well, besides the intricacies of law, of the Chinese law in terms of brand names, that would have changed. But ultimately, registering your brand in whatever market you're looking to go into is a fundamental basic of expansion, all right? So TJ, you were asking, can you explain more about the difference in the China trademark classes subclass system and the foreign systems we might be aware of in America? So TJ, basically the classes are pretty much identical. So when you look at class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, the headings of those are pretty much unilateral across all jurisdictions. There will be slight differences in the subclass system. So in China, in my opinion, they've done it very organized in that you have, I don't know, for example, in class 41, which is education, you've got maybe 150 subclass items and it's listed out. And you basically just call. In Europe, and I believe in the US as well, but don't take me for granted on that. So I know China, guys. I don't know the rest. I'm just making my own comparison here. If you file under the EU regulatory system of trademarks, it's like long sentences. I mean, you have subclass items, but sometimes you can create your own sentences, and that's what gets filed versus the actual item, product, or service category. So in China, it's very systemized by words and product items, whereas elsewhere you can make it long-winded and have nice sentences in it, etc. So ultimately, you might find that the subclass system is bigger because there are more items listed, but you can cross-check it basically. Jay, I hope I answered that properly for you. If not, or you want me to expand on it, just type that in at the end. Okay, so Nali was asking where to do the search. I'm not sure what you were referring, Nali, and you've actually left already, but I'm going to make an assumption here. In terms of searching for classes and subclasses, type into Google, trademark class China, and you should be getting a variety of companies that will have the ability to bring you onto sites where you can have all the classes and subclasses available. Astrid was asking in relation to cost. Astrid, I'm not going to highlight cost on this because I don't want to reveal my costs onto a publicly open webinar session. That you can reach out to me separately. How long does it take to register? I highlighted that. It takes about 16 months. Again, I'm very conservative on that. And yes, you can register your trademarks under an individual name. However, if you are going to develop repatriation strategies, then the tax component of exporting or having that licensing agreement will be based on individual income tax rates and not on corporate tax rates in China. And the income tax rates are higher. So this is why I always recommend putting it under a company versus under an individual name. Dawn is asking, is there a link to where we register, which you could supply to us, please? Dawn, I'm not quite sure what you mean to where we register. You can look up the China Trademark Office, CTMO, and they have a website, and you guys can take a look at it. So it's the China Trademark Office. Abbreviation is CTMO. All right, there's a really long message from James. All right, so James, your question, I believe, is around the domain name versus the actual trademark. So And that's an excellent question. I have read very roughly because you wrote a really long message, James, but I'm guessing your question is around domain versus trademark registration, which are two extremely different things. So one is a domain registration that is registered as a Chinese domain, i.e. you've got a .cn. And the other is the trademark registration, which is registered with the China Trademark Office. They're two very different applications. And I could do a webinar presentation just on domain registration as well. But yeah, domain registration is something, if you want a Chinese domain hosted in China, then you need to get that registered as well. However, James, you do not need to have a local person owning that IP. And if you want to verify that, all you would need to do, so if you've registered your domain under GoDaddy, then my suggestion would be to contact GoDaddy, because if you're trying to get the ICP license in order to be able to build up your website, then GoDaddy can do that application for you in China. So whoever's hosting the domain, the Chinese domain, can also do that application for you, and you can reach out to them directly. I mentioned GoDaddy because that's the most famous one, but there are 67 different domain registrars that are registered with the MIIT office that you can reach out to. I hope that that answered your question, James. If not, let me know. So it was a very, very long question. All right. Yes, Jason, the recording is going to go up on our YouTube channel, but give me a couple of hours to convert the recording, and then it'll be up on the YouTube channel, and everyone will be getting an email with the link to the recording. So here's another, wait, there's a really good question here that I wanted to highlight by Cal. If it takes 18 months, I assume once you submit the application for your trademark, anyone who follows will be ignored. Is that correct? Well, Cal, that was what happened to me when the guy registered 2 weeks prior to me. So, and this is the downside, is that the guy registered 2 weeks before me, but I only got a notification 6 months later. So this is where it's really important to, first of all, do the search, which for us, it generated nothing. Nobody had registered with that name. And then to ask your provider to do regular searches to see what pops up. And to also ask the CTMO office if there's any issues arising. Instead of just waiting 6 months until you get the notification saying, you know, somebody else has registered your mark, right? So you've got to do these checks, right? Now, a question, I don't know if it has been answered because I haven't gone through the whole list, but I will ask it myself. A question that I do get asked is, if we have registered it and the assumption is that we're the first to file, can we start utilizing the brand name? Now, here's my tidbit. In theory, no. You can't use, in theory, you can't use the brand name because you don't know if somebody else is using it. But ultimately, if you've done already the search and there's nobody that has something similar and there's no fear of any form of infringement, then you can go ahead and use the minute that you filed your application, right? You will get only the real outcome of the situation after 18 months. But in this 18 months, you will definitely be in a gray area if you are utilizing your brand name, okay? And you just have to understand that risk, right? That if somebody has registered already, or if you get rejected and then you have to go to an appeal, there could be so many things that happen from the outcome of the registration. So I hope that makes sense for people. It's a gray area if you're utilizing it, but obviously most people do utilize it. Dawn, you were asking the cost for registering. Like I said, I'm not going to highlight that here. And also the cost, guys, also just so you're aware, the cost of doing a registration depends on the amount of trademarks, individual marks, and the amount of classes and the amount of subclasses. Okay, this will all change the cost. So that's also why I'm not mentioning it here, because it will be very much tailor-made to what you're going to do. So TJ, you were saying, I was under the impression that China subclasses made overly broad categories to be narrowed, which might limit future products under a certain brand. For example, clothing, socks, shoes, socks, apparel might be under different classes and costing. No, so all garments are in one class. And then you have the subclasses, which is shoes, socks, pants, skirts, it goes like that. So like in the service sector, you've got accounting, legal, business advisory, information tech, quality control inspections, isn't much detail. Andre was asking, relative to classes and subclasses, is it easy enough to navigate as a newbie, or do you recommend reaching out to a professional for assistance? Well, Andre, if you've already registered in your home jurisdiction, then you can use that as a guideline. And then, like I said, if you type into Google, trademark class China, you will get a variety of things that pop up. And look if you can find the class and subclass list, and then you can do your homework through that as well. Valerie was saying, what if I work with several brands that I sell on my website? Do I need to register all the brands that I sell and work with? Yes, otherwise somebody can take them away and then you can't sell them. So that's the issue. And you need to get permission from those brands that you're allowed to register them on their behalf. Not that they think that you are becoming the IP squatter or the IP hijacker. So if you're selling a multitude of brands on a website that is hosted in China, you should be getting the trademark certificates that they're registered in China, just like all the other e-commerce platforms in China are asking for trademark certificates, China trademark certificates, in order to be able to open their stores. And I would also recommend you, Valerie, to trademark your own platform name. Yes. Okay, those were all the questions that popped up. People have started exiting. I'm not sure if I answered everybody's question clearly enough, but if I have, great. If not, I'm going to stay on, guys. Oh, another one. Giorgio said, we are registered in August, our trademark. As we saw that 3 years ago, it was registered a fake trademark utilizing our name and logo to sell fake products on the Chinese market. Now we should ask within the next week a cancellation of the fake brand to the authority, as this action is possible just within a certain time frame. Yes. So if Giorgio, let me recap a little bit. If you have somebody who has registered your brand name, if you know that they've done it in bad faith, then you have the ability with proof to get a lawyer and take them to court. So like I said prior, the client that I had that was exporting, he was able to solve that case within 3 to 4 months because they had proof of faith. If you have no proof of faith, then you do have to wait 3 years before you can go and register your trademark, but you need to show proof that the current owner in those 3 years has never utilized that brand name for any marketing initiatives or for any service or product or whatever. If they have not utilized it for 3 years, then you have the ability to go to the court to say, please cancel it, and then you have the ability to register it. So Giorgio, that's absolutely correct. Thank you for adding that inside. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I will just go on to the next slide. Remember, guys, if you haven't registered, this is a week about brand strategy, right? So it's all complimentary. You never know what information is going to be useful to you. Tomorrow, Matt's coming on to talk about storytelling, product design. Wendy will be talking about digital marketing. Ariel will be talking about e-commerce trends, and Olivier and I on Friday will be giving a recap and also marketing budgets, how to analyze that and what you need to be thinking about for that. So I want to thank you guys all for coming on. And if you guys want to reach out to me, in the chat box, you've got the link to my diary where you can set up a 15-minute, 30-minute, 1-hour conference with me. You've got my WeChat ID. You also just connect. And if I get into the China Roadmap community, let me know. And if you want to email me, my email's in the chat box as well. All right, guys. So happy to have further on these discussions. I hope you had some good takeaways from today. And if you've got any other questions or you want to talk one-to-one, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I certainly hope to see all of you in the next 4 days at our other presentations and webinars. So I want to thank you all very much and have a fantastic afternoon or evening. Take care and goodbye.